Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Zhang. Hello, and thank you so much for being a listener of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. Last week, I talked about dividing up your spending into needs, wants, and savings for investing, and discussed how much to spend in each category. This week extends that discussion into diving more about what is a need, what is a want, and how to spend based on your values. I'll begin by saying that if, after all your spending, whether it's for needs or wants, you are meeting or exceeding your financial goals, then keep doing what you're doing, and who cares how much you're spending on what, as long as you're happy with how you spend your money. However, if you find yourself off track when it comes to your financial goals, this episode is for you. The key is simple in principle. Spend less than you earn and use the difference to invest towards your financial goals. The bigger difference between what you earn and what you spend, the faster you can reach your financial goals. You also want to know the cost of your financial goals, but that's a subject for another time. Depending on your thoughts about money and your spending habits, the idea of saving a significant sum of money can sound daunting. Remember, personal finance is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Small changes can lead to big differences over time. Work on focusing on actions that will move the needle and support you in the long run, not on pinching to the point that you start feeling deprived, which will often lead to a big splurge of spending later. Most physicians out of training make a six-figure income. And I would say most, though not all, physicians even make a multiple six-figure income, something over $200,000 a year. Compare that to the real median household income in the United States of $80,610 in 2023, according to census.gov. And you know there's some way to make the finances work out. There was a time where every attending physician made less than they do now and made it work. You may argue that you didn't have kids back then. But I know resident physicians who've had children who did not have high-income partners who made it work. If you're living paycheck to paycheck as an attending physician, then it's most likely due to lifestyle inflation. Expenses slowly creep up and become the norm. You have to have daycare for your kids so that you can work to earn money. Because of your call schedule or inflexibility at work, normal daycare hours may not be sufficient, so then you get a nanny. That $100 a week cleaner feels like a necessity when you can barely keep your children clothed and fed with your busy work schedule. That old car you drove through medical training doesn't fit all the car seats you need for your growing family, so you buy a new, larger car. While you're at it, maybe you even decide to treat yourself to something more luxurious because you worked so hard and you deserve it. Or maybe it's not a more luxurious car, but you find yourself spending on other small luxuries. Or maybe some larger luxuries. You want a house where every child has their own room and a backyard so they can play. So you get a physician loan that lets you buy a house with no down payment because you haven't gotten around to saving for a down payment. You talk to other physicians who are making similar choices, so you assume it's all right. You hear about the vacations other physicians are taking, and you start taking nicer vacations yourself. None of these decisions or expenditures seem particularly extravagant, but they gradually add up. You get used to new conveniences, and they become a normal part of your life. But if you keep adding cost without subtracting other costs, you get lifestyle inflation, and there's really no limit to how much you can end up spending. The more expensive it is to maintain your lifestyle, the harder it can be to save. Especially as physician incomes generally do plateau once you reach full efficiency and may even decline as reimbursements decline. My husband and I avoided a lot of common styles of lifestyle inflation. I've never wanted children, so we don't have the expenses that come from having children. Both my husband and I see the purpose of a car as to get us from point A to point B safely. I drive a Honda Civic and he drives a Honda CR-V. When I bought my first new car after becoming attending, I did test drive many luxury cars, including Audis, Lexus, and Mercedes-Benz. But honestly, I could barely tell the difference in the driving experience other than the significantly larger price tag. Luxury cars aren't for me, but maybe you really do notice a difference between a Honda Civic and an Audi. You love the feel of the power of the car. You love driving the car. It brings you happiness. I'm not saying that you can't buy the luxury car, but just notice where your money is going. For me, the most significant increase in spending is how much I spend on travel. After savings and investments, it's the largest line item on our spending plan. And it is really something I value. My husband really could care less about traveling, but he does know how important it is to me. It's important enough that even during med school, residency, and fellowship, I did spend on travel, including international travel. I just spend more now than I did back then. Over time, the cost of our travel has increased, both because of the locations we now travel to, as well as the kind of activities we do while we're traveling. We do more international travel and less domestic road trips, though we've always done a mix of both. We also rent cars now when we used to only stick to public transportation, because this allows us to go to locations that would otherwise be hard to explore. However, getting a rental car does often increase the amount we spend on transportation while we travel compared to other trips in the past. We also go on longer trips and travel more often. I will say that for us, this has really been intentional spending and planned in advance. It's something that if we needed to, we could easily cut back on. It's much harder to cut back on the type of lifestyle inflation that goes into your everyday life. Things like hiring someone to come clean regularly, paying for lawn care instead of mowing the lawn yourself, and then starting to pay for lawn treatments to make the grass even greener. I'll never forget when we first started paying for snow removal and stopped shoveling the driveway. This was actually back when I was still in medical school and my husband had finished his master's and got a job as a teacher. That definitely felt like money well spent. So I'm not saying that paying for these services is wrong in any way, but just notice what you're paying for now that you didn't used to pay for in the past. For some, the time savings and energy savings is well worth the price. But it's all about being mindful and intentional when it comes to your spending. Lifestyle inflation affects people at all income levels. It results from hedonic adaptation, which is the subject of episode 131, Escaping the Hedonic Treadmill, which released on November 27, 2024. We adapt to changes we make. That brings us happiness initially, but then we return to our baseline happiness over time. We buy that dream house because we believe it will make us happy. And we are happy for some time in that newer, bigger, beautiful house, but eventually it becomes our new normal and we return to our baseline of happiness. The hedonic treadmill will have us wishing for an even better, bigger, more expensive house when we become used to our current living situation. It's a treadmill because you chase happiness while actually running in place, not making real forward progress in happiness. To really increase happiness, consider listening to the monthly episodes I've been doing this year based off the book, The How of Happiness. The exercises discussed to increase happiness generally have nothing to do with actually spending money. The good thing is that hedonic adaptation works both ways. We also return to our baseline happiness after changes or events that cause us sadness, anger, or other negative feelings. Think back to what your life looked like a few years ago, or another time where you earned less, but were still happy. Think about how you spent money then compared to how you spend money now. Consider the expenses that cover true needs, like medication to treat high blood pressure, and what cover wants, things that aren't really necessary. Much of lifestyle inflation is a mix of needs and wants. Many of us need a car for transportation to work and to run errands, so a car really may be a need. That doesn't mean we need a new car or a luxury car. A 10-year-old car can get you to work just as effectively as a new one. A Honda Civic can get you to work just as effectively as a BMW. Getting a new car can masquerade as a need, whereas it's really a want. And a lower cost used car can fulfill the need. Even something that seems like a small expense, like buying lunch for $15 a day, can add up. Over a course of a year, assuming working 230 days a year, that $15 a day lunch becomes $3,450. Packing a lunch would cost substantially less and potentially even be healthier. Of course, you can spend money in a way that brings value to you. But if you want to find ways to save for your financial goals, you need to look hard at the wants pretending to be needs and be deliberate on what lifestyle inflation you choose to spend money on. Other than lifestyle inflation, another barrier to saving is not being mindful about your spending. This is why I talk about having a spending plan so that you can plan your spending in advance and avoid mindless spending. A 2023 survey from NerdWallet, which was conducted online by the Harris Poll, found that 74% of Americans have a monthly budget. While it's great that this is actually the majority of people in the United States, it also means that more than a quarter of Americans don't plan out their spending at all. And of those who do actually have a budget, 84% of those 2,000 adults that were surveyed say that they sometimes exceed their monthly budget. Mindful spending is spending you plan for, making sure that you're spending on things you really need and things you value more than the cost of the purchase. When you spend mindfully, you're using money to provide for your needs and your priorities, the things that make your life better. You avoid spending money on things that don't bring you true value, or at least not enough to justify the cost. Any one purchase may not seem like a lot, and it's unlikely to make or break you financially. Things like buying lunch every day. But it does all add up. Again, I'm not telling you to not go out for lunch, but to be mindful at whether the cost brings you enough value for what you're paying. If you're meeting up with a colleague for lunch at a restaurant, it may be well worth buying lunch for that social connection. The days you're eating lunch in the hospital cafeteria, even if you are meeting colleagues, are days where bringing your lunch is probably the financially better option. If you savor every bit of the lunches that you purchase, perhaps it is worth the $3,450 you would spend over the course of a year. Or maybe you're so busy with work at home that not having to prepare your lunch relieves a big source of stress and gives you more time to spend with your loved ones, then it also may be money well spent. However, if the time it takes to buy lunch is the same as preparing lunch, which you're eating quickly without really tasting it, then that's an obvious change to make, at least in my mind. Every dollar you spend is a reflection of what you value. The key isn't what you're buying, it's whether your spending genuinely improves your life. Spending in itself is not bad. It's not about saving every possible penny. What money you don't spend now, and instead use to save and invest for the future, is getting to your financial goals. How much do you value those goals over your current spending? In the book, Your Money or Your Life, Vicki Robinson talks about how we trade our life energy and time for money. How much do you value your life energy and time? How much would you prefer to work less and have that energy and time to spend on other things? What are the things you would give up in order to get back that energy and time? Maybe it's dining out less. Maybe it's downsizing where you live. Maybe it's moving to a lower cost of living area. You'll likely find that there are other things you aren't willing to give up. For me, I wouldn't give up travel, but I could spend less on travel if I wasn't meeting my financial goals. It's not about giving up your wants. It's figuring out what wants to prioritize, to find a balance between your current wants and your future wants. You have to decide you want to save and invest money for those future wants. My own personal highest priority is autonomy, being able how I decide to spend my time. This includes how much I work and the work I do. This drives me to save and invest for financial freedom, but also where I continue to travel now and make it so I'm able to continue to travel when I no longer work for money. To identify where you really value spending money, spend some time journaling on it. What is the single best thing you've ever spent money on? What have you purchased that you still get so much value out of even to this day? What experiences have you purchased that still bring you happiness when you think about them? Where have you spent money that continues to make your life easier or more fun? Of the money you spend regularly, what gives you the biggest continuous happiness boost? Now consider what spending doesn't measure up to the cost. What do you spend money on that you would be fine without? Where do you tend to spend more money than you planned on? Where do you regularly spend money out of habit? Where could you spend less but get a similar experience? What activity could you do that may be equally fun but cost less? What would it take to get an item on sale instead of paying full price? Perhaps it's as easy as asking for a lower price. There are some things that can be negotiated. On the flip side, do you buy things because they're on sale, but that you don't actually need? Are there things you could borrow instead of buying? I make a lot of use of my local library, which has a great collection of audiobooks and imprint books. So I rarely buy books unless I know it's something that I want to have as reference and be able to reach for at any given moment. Libraries are a great source of not only books, but may also have things like video games and toys for your children that you can borrow, which can help if you have children who get bored of their toys quickly. Look at your spending habits. Do you tend to subscribe to things but don't use the subscription or forget about the subscription? Maybe you have an online yoga membership that you never really use. Is there something you tend to buy but don't get around to using? Maybe you buy books that you never get around to reading. Do you tend to go grocery shopping when you're hungry or without a list of what you actually need? Do you shop when you're bored? Or do you shop to make yourself feel better? Do you tend to buy multiple options thinking that you'll return what doesn't work, but you never get around to actually making the return? Do you want to upgrade something that you already have that still functions well? Do you spend to motivate yourself to do something? Like thinking if you have a gym membership, then you'll actually go and work out. Do you tend to spend more when you're with others or spend more when you're alone? Do you make purchases out of expectations, like buying something at a fundraiser that you don't really want? Tons of money gets spent on marketing and advertising because it works. Marketers sell us a lifestyle or an image or a self-concept that will be fulfilled by purchasing whatever they are selling. By spending the time to identify where we want to devote our hard-earned dollars and knowing what we value, we can avoid spending based on marketing or what society suggests we should value. In the end, decide on the ones where you will spend mindfully and without guilt. Those are the things that truly bring you value. For things that straddle between a need and a want, consider what you will spend only as much as necessary to meet the need without becoming a want. Look at your current spending and decide what you plan to no longer spend money on because it does not bring sufficient value to your life. Once you've decided on your financial goals, keep it simple and automate as much as possible to help you stick to those goals. Create systems where you automatically save and invest, as well as systems that will keep you away from mindless spending. Identify your spending triggers, whether it's a situation or an emotion, and learn how to avoid them or redirect yourself from spending due to an emotion. If you know that every time you go to Costco, you buy more than you were planning on, then try making a list and sticking to the list, or even potentially have your spouse go with the shopping list. So you're not even enticed by being in the store to make purchases that are not on the list. If it's an emotional trigger, what can you do instead of spending to feel better? Perhaps ask a specific friend or loved one if you can contact them when you are in one of those situations. And lastly, don't beat yourself when you slip up. One purchase that's out of line with your spending plan isn't going to make or break your finances. Don't expect perfection for yourself. That's a recipe for disaster. New skills take practice. Imagine a toddler learning how to walk and consider how often they fall. You don't berate your toddler every time they fall when they're learning to walk. You cheer them on for every step that they take. You need to do the same for yourself. Cheer for yourself for any progress you make, and pick yourself up after each fall. If you would like help evaluating your spending and realigning your spending based on your values, consider working with me. As your coach, I can help you reflect on your current spending and what drives that spending. I'll cheer you on and remind you of all your progress, and I can help pick you up when you fall. You can set up a Zoom call for us to discuss how I can help you at www.growyourwealthymindset.com. Thank you so much for being a listener of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, and I'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, have a wonderful week. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.